Families do cut back, but they plan their reductions. They don't pull the rug out from underneath the college tuition for their kids. They don't kick grandma out on the street and put her in a homeless shelter. For some reason, we have half this chamber that only wants to work on one side of the equation. It's only about cuts, cuts, and more cuts, even though they are senseless, they are dangerous.
Generally, 2.5% can easily be cut across every program. It could even be 10%. But someone has to make a decision about which programs are effective and which ones are not effective.
Well, there's some of the sound today. You saw Louisiana Senator Mary Landrieu on the Senate floor saying that the federal government is trimming. The government is trimming back. As you take a look at what the debt added over the last year in an animation, it's roughly $38,000 a second. As we told you the other day, that's being added to the national debt in the last year, $38,000 a second. And Michael Ramirez actually has a cartoon. He's a cartoonist that looks back, and you take a good long look at this. You like pie charts. This is an actual pie chart. The 2007 federal budget against the 2013 federal budget. You see the 2013 budget 40% larger. $38 trillion in spending versus $2.7 trillion. The deficit back then, in 2007, $161 billion versus $901 billion in 2013. And there you see the sequester cuts, $85 billion. That's 2.23%. Michael Ramirez, thanks for letting us use the pie chart. We want to start this panel with a tweet from Laura Carlson. Laura Carlson from Iowa, I guess. Laura Carlson, IA. True sequestration numbers. What is the truth? Can President Obama decide what exactly, where in budget cuts can be made? And as we've been talking about, you know, they are cuts. They've been talking about cuts, but the federal government is still growing. It's how the sequester is implemented. But can President Obama, even as it's written, decide where these cutbacks, these decreases go? Steve.
Well, there's some disagreement on this. The White House says basically, no, we have to do this across the board, and we have very little flexibility. You're going to hear from Republicans, and I think House Republicans specifically, that the White House, in fact, does have a fair amount of discretion, and it has to do in budget arcana with where the cuts that come as a result of the sequester actually take place. At what level of the government? Do they come at a level that is called programs, projects, and activities, or do they come at a higher level that's a broader category called the accounts level? I think Republicans believe that they come at the accounts level and want to make the case that that alone gives the president maneuverability, gives him the ability to move stuff around so that he doesn't have to assess these across the board. And in case the Republicans or to resolve the dispute, Republicans, I think, will include language in legislation coming up, and maybe in the next week, that will specify that the way that the Budget Control Act was written was meant to have these changes at the accounts level. So if they're right, and if that works, then they will send that to the Senate, and the Senate will have to choose whether they're going to give the president that authority or recognize that authority that he already has. And
frankly, Mara, this meeting Friday, I mean, that could be one thing that's decided, is this transfer authority. It could be the final white flag that both sides say, okay, let's just do this.
It could be, or it could be the beginning of negotiations for real deficit reduction. I mean, that I think is a real long shot. But we've gone through these dances before, and don't forget, the reason we're here is because both sides failed to make the grand bargain. The president the grand bargain is where the president agrees to entitlement cuts and the Republicans agreed to some kind of revenue increases. And since then, we've had a series of fiscal cliffs, and we're going to get more of them. I just want to say something about the bigger talks. The president has been repeating in recent days, Jay Carney said this, he said in the State of the Union that he's willing to do change CPI and means testing of benefits. So he's reminding people that he is willing to do that. And John Boehner said the other day that he's willing to close loopholes in the context of big tax reform that lowers rates. You know, if both sides were brave and creative, they could get something done.
But why, you know,
Just
here we
wanted
are
to say that.
I know, but here we are at
Just
the
wanted to
last
say
day
that.
before this thing kicks in. But you know what makes people, the Jim Angle story, I said, makes people just so mad. The $6 billion on lessons about democracy and decision-making from fish. I mean, that kind of thing, Senator Coburn always points out, those kinds of things just make people infuriated.
And in fact, Senator Coburn asked the GAO to do a report on this ocean of waste and duplication. In 2011, I'll give you just a sampling, 18 programs on nutrition assistance, 82 for improving teacher quality, 47 for job training, 56 for financial literacy. It goes on forever. And it includes $1 billion that the government has sent in the last decade to 250,000 dead people. All in all, it amounts to 100 or 200 billion a year, which at the minimum is 2.5 times our domestic sequester. This is an ocean of waste, and we haven't even had a drop of it removed.
We have more of this in this panel on this online show in just a minute. That's it for this panel.